So you guys want to have an executive session or you just skip over? I'm good.
You will have an executive one, just put during the whole business.
To make it difference, mate.
Okay.
I'm prepared to address it in my legal report. If something comes up that you think you need it, then we can. Otherwise, we'll just cancel it. That's okay with you, Mayor.
Yep, I'm good with everything. Okay, we will call the meeting to order at 1:32 PM. Roll call, please.
Mark Myers,
Present.
Brian Baird.
Here.
Kevin Wall, Ron West,
President.
David Lexi,
Present.
Don Graham, John Myers.
Present.
Sir, I believe you have a quorum.
Thank you. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from the July 11th, 2022 meeting. Take it everybody received those electronically. Do we have any additions or corrections? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve as presented. I'll second that.
Myers and Lexi. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got our check register today. I have all the claims here and have any questions about that. $49,675. Is there any questions? Like I said, it's good to answer questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Sherman on his report? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
I'd also like to have some line item transfers in our budget. It's going to facilitate the purchases you're going to talk about a little bit later in the meeting. I'd like to request a line item transfer from 5460 district vehicle expense to 5399 for discretionary spending in the amount of $50,000 and line item transfer from 5455 furniture and fixed purchases to 5399 board discretionary spending in the amount of $15,000.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve these two transfers?
So moved.
Commissioner West, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lexi. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Over the CAC report. Director's report.
Well, welcome everyone. So good to see everybody here and a cool start to September. Exciting. Next day.
You call us exciting? It's cold, Jesse.
Cold.
It's cold.
Please.
I like it.
Before I get too far into my actual report, there is something that has happened over the past week that you may or may not have heard about. Ray's sold their most of their business to Waste Management. In our world, that makes me very sad because Ray's was an amazing partner for us. They were easy to communicate with. They understood solid waste districts, which isn't always easy to understand us. And they really worked with us. One of the reasons why our facility is run so inexpensively as it is because they recognize the value of the materials we bring in, because they came to see what we do to capture our materials and the value that it brings to them. So although budgets have already been submitted for the year, I do wish that I had insight into this before that had to happen. I am a little concerned about what the future will hold for budgets and collection, but as always, we will do our best to show them our worth, and hopefully they will work with us to continue collecting at the same rate or something similar as what we do now. We are very, very blessed with the rate that we have because basically we're only paying for the compactor. We don't pay for our materials because our materials are so good. So we will continue to pride ourselves and show them what we do and hope that they will work with us. I am just saying that so that next year, if there are some other line item transfers, you understand why it wasn't already in the budget ahead of time, just because we were unaware. I do not know when everything will take place, but it is my understanding that the only thing that Ray's is keeping is their metal collections.
That's correct.
So, so it was a sad day when we saw that at the district because we really do enjoy working with Ray's. So we'll just hope that Waste Management is every bit as good and communicates with us effectively. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there just to let you all know. But as far as education goes, Carla and I have been working on changing some of our programs over so that we now have programs available to pretty much every school level in such a way that we feel like they're actually building on their learning instead of us kind of just going in there to fill a spot. So we started that with kindergarten and literally have worked our way all the way up through high school. As I've mentioned in the past, honestly, we have not seen our numbers suffer and we've really seen engagement in the public grow over the past couple of years. So we certainly don't want to throw away the opportunity to serve our schools, but we also have to recognize our limitations given the fact that we are only 2 people. We do help everything else and we are now looking to build this facility. So we have communicated that with the schools. Again, one of my concerns is the only benefactors of the paper recycling in Johnson County now are our schools with a very few exceptions. And I do not know if Waste Management will continue that program. So that is something that certainly we would want to look at for the future to see what we can do with our schools, see if maybe there's some grant opportunities, see what costs would be. Certainly as their school boards are talking about their trash contracts, because many of them do utilize Ray's, what can we do to start seeing more recycling in those schools? We get phone calls all the time. We actually have principals reaching out to us now because they love what we're of course doing on Creekside. That's not something that we could do for every school by any means. We just don't have the money or the manpower to do that. So how can we get recycling into these schools, especially if their paper bins are removed? That's certainly a concern and something that, you know, I would like to see if we can help in any way. Our finances will be a little bit tight though over the next couple of years. So we'll have to work together to try and work and see what we can do to make that happen. But it's
Yes,
always,
Have you had any conversations with Waste Management yet?
no, because if you have tried to communicate with Waste Management in the central region, it's not very easy because you are shuffled off to a person in Michigan. Because we actually have them for our trash collection because we used to have CGS.
Yeah.
So we did have some problems with our trash being collected, but it seems to be back on track, at least from that standpoint. But there used to be a fairly strong contingency of Waste Management personnel, both lobbyists and sales and regional people in this area. I would assume that we will see more of that again, but we have not in the past couple of years seen that centrally. But now that they are purchasing so much centrally, I assume that maybe we'll start seeing that again. So we will have presence here in central Indiana and not feel like we are going out of state to try and get information.
Commissioner West, the city of Franklin had a long meeting with Waste Management with Ray's collectively. We reached out to Calvin at Ray's and he brought their people in. So if you know Calvin, reach out to him.
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. Yeah.
And they were there within the week
Yeah.
of being it. So I think they're amenable to meeting with us
Yeah.
and bringing their new person in, because Calvin's staying with the family and their small business that they're keeping. But
Right.
yeah, I got immediate response when I talked to Calvin.
Yeah, and I don't know if their salespeople will end up being the salespeople in this area. I can only hope. Deanna is fantastic, and I've had great work with her, but that is not something that we have been made aware of.
We were advised by Waste Management officials that every one of their employees was retained, with the exception of the ones that are going with the
Right.
family. And he's ready to get out of the
That's-
business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Lynn, so
No.
speaking of that, was anything mentioned about the fact that they own the property right next to the transfer station?
No, we didn't get into that. I was wearing my city hat, not my solid. waste.
No, I mean, but that's part of Franklin, so I didn't know. Yeah, so, okay. So yeah, so that's where we are. And, you know, again, the paper retrieving is now such a small piece, they probably, it's probably not even in the forefront of anybody's mind except for us. It's been nice because we've been able to at least say that we're capturing the paper and helping with that. So it's, as I said before, it's always difficult when you go to a school and some of these kids can't access recycling regularly, and it's not even being done in a school. It's really hard to kind of tie in that education. So, but on top of that, we did have a great visit with Hendricks County, and Hendricks County has really been working hard on getting up their availability for programs that they have recorded and also to give out to the schools. So Carla and I are working on those as well. We came up with a couple new programs that we really like that are beneficial to, again, many grade levels. And so we are working on that. I also am hoping, we had a great success in getting in with Franklin High School. So I'm hoping that that continues because things like fast fashion, you know, all of those ideas are at the forefront of kids' minds today. And so because they're seeing it all the time, they're seeing what's happening because, you know, everything is made out of oil and what's going on with plastics and what's going on. So I'm hoping that by us being able to help them with that picture, where before we've kind of just stuck to the basics of 3 R's and those type of things, that they'll start making those connections. So that is our hope, is trying to really work in that middle school, high school arena so that we are creating those connections, because those are the kids that are now looking at, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? How can I be helpful? You know, so forth. So that is really our goal. So whether we can offer that online, whether we can offer that through lunch and learns, you know, whatever the case may be, we are trying to make ourselves as flexible as possible to get that information out to them. Very successful shredding event, not necessarily in numbers, but we had about 300 people, which was crazy. It was huge. And of course we had that construction just pop up. So there was detours and yeah. So, you know, it's always fun to be yelled at for things that you have absolutely no control over, but you were all used to that. So, and so are we, unfortunately. But it was a very successful event. The Talks Box had a very successful day. One of the things we're really trying to do when we go toward November is getting people to understand that we are open all the time, because we did have a lot of retirees, especially at the Talks Box. And so I really want the journal to hopefully hit home that, hey, this space only closes from mid-December to the beginning of March. We're here all the other times of the year. And then of course, when we move, you know, we'll hopefully be there anytime the recycling center is open. So it still is funny how many people just, no matter how many times we talk about it, just still don't recognize that you don't have to come on that Saturday. Now, if they called, we were able to divert them and they were thrilled. You know, they're like, oh, well, I want an appointment for tomorrow then, you know, and so that worked out great. But we did see a large number out there that probably could have made it any other time. We really try and use those Saturdays for people that just can't make it Monday, Wednesday, or Friday during the week. So, but success nonetheless. So our next one will be November, I think it's the 6th, okay, November 5th, and that will be the last one for the year for us until next year. So we also had a wonderful visit from Jay County. Jay County is also looking to build a facility. So as we were, it was ironic, somebody had mentioned for him to call me and see what we're doing, because they were very inspired by, you know, our small but mighty force. And so he came down with one of his board members. And one of the things that, of course, they had concerns about was, what does it look like? How dirty is it? And is it anything like landfill? Because Jay County does have a landfill. So everybody's mind, even when you're talking about recycling, and unfortunately they have a lot of dumping issues, it goes to trash, right? It's going to smell, it's all these things. And so we sat down, we talked a lot. We talked about commodities, we talked about different angles. And of course we toured them around, and we got the most glowing letter or email afterwards, because not only were they, you know, so thankful and gracious for our staff, but they just couldn't believe how clean it was. And it completely changed the mind of the board member, because it until you go, you don't know. and that's what he even said there. He's like, there's no smell, there's no nothing. I'm like, yeah, this isn't trash. We don't take people's trash. We don't want to work, with rodents, and bugs, and, so it's nice, to know that we were able to help support another district, and also that, they were impressed by what we do on such small funds. So we kind of talked about some of their plans, because their plans do align with what we're looking at as well, similar facility, and so forth. So I'm hoping that we may see more of their board members as those come to vote, but we'll be prepared for them and happy to host them if we do. So it was very nice to hear and to be able to share with the employees. So I think.
You said they had a landfill, but they don't offer trash collection.
No, so Jay County, Bestway owns the landfill
Oh, okay.
up there. And believe it or not, it's very close to where the district just has a small little facility. But they have 6 drop-off locations, and as we know, the problems that arise with drop-off locations, and they just can't do
They
it
drop
anymore.
off
And so,
everything.
yeah, everything. And so, yeah, they can't do it anymore. And so they're looking to build, and they wanted to see, what can be accomplished. And I'm like, you can do a lot with a little, just take some ingenuity. So yeah, so that's where we were. It was a great visit. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Legal report.
Thank you, sir. You will recall at our last meeting, that's why you'll see me under both legal report and old business. At our last meeting, we talked about proceeding with the potential purchase of the property from the Linville family. And after I had discussed with you that the general terms were that they were willing to sell the tract, it's an actual platted lot. It's roughly 3 acres, 2.97, I believe, acres at $35,000 an acre. Then after your last meeting, then I reached out to their attorney, and you have before you on the board tables in front of you, I think you've all seen it, a copy of a contingent purchase agreement for purchase of this unimproved parcel of property on Graham Road. Of note, you will see that there are essentially 4 conditions that I requested, and they were agreed to. I must tell you, the Linville group, it's right now it is Charlotte and her brother Jake, because the property was Fred and Helen Ann's, and Fred and Helen Ann owned everything at some point in time, and they're both deceased now, and it was put in a trust, and the case is pending in Shelby County, because they also had land in Shelby County, and so anything from their perspective is subject to the court approving any kind of sale. And Jim Admires, their attorney, I'm also familiar with the circuit court judge, and if everybody's in agreement, he'll be in agreement. So I'm not worried about that contingency, but I was concerned that there be some contingencies put in here for the Solid Waste Management District Board. And those 4 contingencies essentially, which were all agreed to by them, are up here on page 2. The first one, of course, is the statutory criteria that before a governmental entity purchases a property, but to make sure that the purchase price is no more than the average of 2 appraisals. I asked Mr. Admire if the property had been appraised, and he said it had. It actually appraised for a little bit higher for purposes of the trust than the $35,000 an acre. But my thought was, if we're going forward, I would contact that appraiser and see if maybe we might be able to get just an updated appraiser and save ourselves a little money, since he's already appraised it in the last year, but we would need 2 appraisals from that. I was asked by Mr. Walls in that discussion, and maybe some of you have run into that. Does the property purchase amount change depending on what those appraisals are? And no, it's a firm number. It doesn't go up if the average is higher, because I expect it, quite frankly, to maybe go up higher. But no, they understand that if the appraisers come in higher, it's going to be the $35,000 an acre. If it comes in lower, we can't buy it under the statute. So that's the first condition. The second was a phase 1 environmental. I always think that's probably good practice when you get out there in industrial areas to at least do a phase one environmental and see if there's anything that we need to know about. The third was zoning approval. Now I'm putting on my City of Franklin hat, and also this hat. I don't think they're in conflict with each other, but knowing where that property is, it is zoned industrial light. And technically our use as we are at the Culligan building now is not approved in industrial light because it's supposed to be reserved for industrial areas. I reached out to the city and explained my potential conflict. And I said, we would like to do what we're doing similarly now. How do you feel about this planning and zoning? And I suggested that maybe it was more along the lines of a special exception since it was a government type of a use rather than an actual recycling center. They agree with that interpretation. Getting a special exception, as you know, is much easier than a variance. But the whole purchase is contingent upon us getting approval from the City of Franklin. Commissioner Walls said he would be more than happy to appear before the Board of Zoning Appeals and ask for that special exception if we told them what we wanted to do with that property. So that's built into the contingency. Ron, you look like you're getting ready to ask me a question. Oh, okay. And then the fourth one, of course, that I have in there is that this is a subject to you, not only approval of the purchase agreement, but your ability to fund the purchase as the fiscal body of the solid waste management. So those are the four contingencies that are there. If you're inclined to proceed further, we have 150 days to determine if those contingencies are met. They, in that interim period of time, will get approval once we have a signed purchase agreement from the court that authorizes the sale. A couple of things that I think will probably be noted, just looking at an approved plat, and again, wearing my planning and zoning hat, it has a driveway. It's not a shared driveway, it's a platted driveway. So both lots are entitled to use that driveway. I do think, understanding ordinances, you'll see the infamous sidewalk to nowhere that you all hear about, but sidewalks eventually go somewhere. So my guess is that that sidewalk will need to be extended up along the way. But other than that, I don't see any property types of restrictions, but we'll need to ferret that out. There would have to be, obviously, the next big thing would be, what are you talking about in terms of costs of building a building? This purchase is not contingent upon us building the actual building, because that's not really feasible to do. So I suppose the potential risk is that if we can't build a building, we have a parcel of property that's 3 acres, industrial light, that we purchased for $102,900. My experience has been probably not bad price for industrial light property, but that is a risk that I'm sure you want to think about or talk about if that does not come to pass, we can build the building in the next 2.5 years that we have left. So with that, I will be quiet and entertain any questions, responses. As the mayor pointed out, I did ask Jesse to advertise an executive session if there was something that someone felt the need to have a discussion in private once this was presented to you, although I was instructed to go forward with the purchase agreement at the last meeting, but I didn't know what I didn't know at that point in time if other questions came up in the interim period of time. So if we are prepared to proceed with the conditional purchase, we will not need the executive session.
So what, two things, a timeline on building a facility, and two, the funding mechanism that we would use to do that.
Do you want to approach, yeah, a different, we did have a meeting with President Walls and with Pat as to second step. I didn't want to presume that we were going to purchase it, but there was a meeting between Pat and the president to think about what those things are. That's certainly the heavy lift in this case.
And Ron, as you remember, for many years, we've kept our cash at a high rate compared to what our budget was, just in anticipation that someday we're going to be able to buy the land and build a building. This is obviously the first step in buying the land, so we will have an investment in the land that's already paid for. And I've checked with banks, there's not a problem getting funding for that. and it could be spread over 10 or 12 year
What was the
period.
funding?
The funding, once you have the land, which we will purchase with cash, because we've already accumulated the cash, then that would be similar to a mortgage type in a 10 to 12-year payout over
Okay.
time. And banks are willing to do that. We're a pretty good credit risk.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
this qualifies for the municipal.
And so we're probably on a timeline for construction, because what I'm thinking about is, we got 3 years or a little less now on the current facility. And I just assume they're not gonna be real willing to work with us at the termination of that, so we gotta have a pretty solid plan and basically get going pretty quick.
It'd be sooner rather than later. We don't, 2.5 years, it'll take every bit of 2.5 years.
Yeah,
I believe with the money that you transferred, that we can cover the costs that Lynn had mentioned. And I would imagine even the architectural costs for renderings. And then with the budget next year, we do have the additional 300,000 that was put in there to start developing the land.
So we should have enough money with the money that you just transferred to get some engineer's estimates on the cost of the building. And then
Yeah.
start the financing process with that.
so do we have a footprint on the building now? I mean, do we have any concept of the size or?
Yes, I mean, I think that when we spoke, we talked about a 10 to 12,000 basic, square footage with office / education space on the side, just a simple drive-through. We know we need space for semi trucks. It should be a fairly simple building to construct. It's just going to be a matter of bidding to see cost, because as we know, it's very
Yeah.
expensive. Of course, we'll need concrete for the semi trucks, but it would be our hope that we would do some other, sustainable initiatives to try and keep costs lower than, and still benefit that area so that we can not worry about drainage issues or any of that as well. So,
But undoubtedly, it'll come up.
yeah.
You know, it's gonna be a lot more expensive than what we anticipate. Of course it
Right.
is. You know, it will be a lot more expensive than what we anticipate. And I think then, once you purchase the property, the
Mhm.
question's gonna be, are you gonna get an engineering firm? Obviously, it's your decision to hire, it, start looking at layouts and plans. And now we're fortunate enough that we already have one that works. We've got a building that's an industrial building for all intents and purposes. So we do have some experience of what we probably need from the building that is there. But you all have had plenty of experience, and the costs are always going to creep up for things you don't anticipate.
And it's hard to get steel.
Mhm.
Right now, it's 8 to 10 months out to get steel.
Yeah.
If this is a steel building, so we've got to put that in consideration as well. So the quicker we can find an architectural firm to design a building and order the material, it's going to be a year minimum.
Mhm.
I thought we would just use tires and clothing for insulation.
We can do that.
That could work. You're probably looking somewhere around, I would think, $365 a square foot right now.
Mhm.
We're looking at a project of about 4 million.
That's
that-
what Commissioner Walsh was saying as well. about
Yeah, that's what we're experiencing right now
365 a square foot.
for commercial. That's about what we're paying right now.
I think I
It's
heard.
gonna go up a little bit, but then I think next spring we'll start to see a little bit of
Come back.
decline. The problem is if we catch up, like right now, you can't get flex material for HVAC, you can't get flex. And it's because of the steel,
Mhm.
the webbing and the flex. So I think we're gonna have some steel issues all the way through probably next spring into summer.
Amazon has 2/3 of all the US steel tied up for the next 2 years.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I think that was, of course, I always play like I'm a touchdown behind. So I think he threw out about 4 million and I said, well, it'll be 5. I mean, I'm
You're looking at
always-
4.5,
yeah,
5 probably
looking at
by
that.
then.
So the question is, where's that funding come from?
And before we vote on this, there is one typo.
Yes.
Paragraph A says the town of Franklin. The rest of the document refers to the city of Franklin. Should we correct that?
Okay, yes, I'll correct that.
I don't want to upset Mayor Barnett.
I'm sitting here representing you, not him. I can correct
I'm
that.
sure there'll be a rollover in there somewhere. The one concern I have, and I need to bring this up because I'm dealing with it right now. Sorry, Mayor. Should just grab your leg. We right now are dealing with a drainage issue off of the property in between the animal shelter and this property we're looking at. So I would want to see a drainage plan of what's going to happen with the drain off from that water on that property. Because if they're planning on bringing it into the property as this one here that we're getting ready to probably fight with into the animal shelter drainage, it's going to cause us to have to redo our retention pond, and we're not going to be happy about that.
I'm not. Take me through it again. I'm not.
D&D, that building right there.
Isn't that the dog
Yeah. that's
daycare? Dog daycare?
If you go over to the right there, you'll see their drainage
Uh-huh.
ditch. The city of Franklin has allowed them to run that down and tie it into a pipe that goes into our retention pond on the animal shelter, which we're getting ready to have a real serious problem with. Because we're trying to add on to the animal shelter and they're giving us a hard time over that drainage
Uh-huh.
there. I don't know why or how the city of Franklin allowed that to happen. But
I can't tell you.
before I mean, there's gonna be a fight to know where that drainage is gonna go, regardless of who buys that piece of property.
It would be my hope that we would incorporate some of the sustainable initiatives that would completely help with that, because I figured that that might be a problem, just looking at the slope of the fact that we were at the top of the hill.
I would think there's gonna have to be a retention pond put on one of those two pieces of property.
So, yes,
Probably, but I will tell you from a practical standpoint, I don't know how you can get a drainage calc done until you've got a hard surface design prepared.
And understood, but the sheet value of that, if you're talking a 10,000 square foot building, is
Right.
gonna be pretty great
But-
at that point in time.
You're right. So I don't know. So I guess the question back to you is there's no contingency about a drainage plan in the real estate purchase agreement.
Understand?
And if you're gonna put one in there, I don't know how we're gonna be able to meet it without having a building design done first.
I think you could find someone that could do the drainage calculations off of a footprint of 10,000 square feet. That could give us a wag on what they think it's gonna take.
well, the MS4s actually have the capability of doing that. But that's what I'm saying is that we would use that to ensure that we have the areas between parking spaces are actually made into, the sloping ditches that hold into the water that can then be used as rain gardens and so forth.
Right. No,
Because
understood.
we would want to see all that. And if we ended up with a corner wetland space, then we know what to do with that too. So it is our hope to kind of work with, all the MS4s, not just kind of, but, certainly work with Greenwood with what they did with their small spot to be able to showcase what can actually do and how we can capture that. Because Lord knows, if anybody knows about dealing with drainage, it is us in the building that we're at. So we would love the opportunity to show people what can be done if you don't just put, concrete pad on everything and, let it go on a farmland. I mean, that's kind of our whole hope, is to use education across the board of what we're doing here.
But to Commissioner Baird's point is you don't know what requirements the ordinance has
Right.
for that. And I don't know how you're gonna get those requirements built out completely
You're not,
for parking in time for a purchase agreement.
you're not. I said, but there should be, I would think Kevin maybe even could do some kind of wag on what kind of heat that's gonna cause. I would think I think he's got that ability. All I know is, and Commissioner Walls will tell you, we are dealing with a real issue from that drainage that's coming off of that property right next door right now. And I just know that if there's something built to the north of that, and in any way that's going to affect tying in or the drainage coming across that property, that we're going to fight it like crazy. And do we want to fight ourselves?
So I could
I guess that's
offer
what-
up my stormwater department to work with Jesse on trying to throw something together real quick.
Just some figures to see
You
where
know,
we're at.
like she said, a rain garden, because we want to showcase this like we've done with our stormwater department. Showcase it uses as training thing, so it would be good for Chris to help with that.
Yeah, and I'm in no way against purchasing the property. I don't want you to think that. I just know the problem we're having right now with the drainage, and are we gonna add to that problem that we're gonna be fighting with the city of Franklin about? That's my
Yeah, I don't
concern.
know.
On your
Yeah, I
other
guess.
hat.
But my question, and I don't know, I mean, could be, I don't, like I said, I don't know I don't know what I don't know. I only get called in when it's a problem, and it's not a problem yet.
Well, I think it'd be after we make the purchase of the property,
Well,
and we
but-
have the square footage, then hand that over to the MS4 coordinator, have him design something fancy out, because he likes to do that anyway.
Because they should be able to tell the loads, because that's how people are paying. I mean, so they should be able to tell that.
But to address your issue, are you wanting me to put that as a contingent to the purchase? 'Cause
No,
I'm-
I was just bringing it up
Okay.
because I'm dealing with the other issue right now.
Sure.
As we're trying to get the add-on for the animal shelter done. That's what's holding us back right now, is that drainage that goes into our tile. I still don't know how they got it in there. I haven't had anybody answer that question yet.
Yeah.
How they went across our property line and put that
Mhm.
ditch on our property.
Saturday and Sunday work.
Must have been something, but
Where did they put it?
if you go to the right there, see, no, that's
No,
the
it's the sidewalk.
sidewalk.
That's
There you
sidewalk.
go. See where that,
And the outflow,
there is a underground pipe that our water drains into that goes back into our retention pond. They brought their drainage down, their whole lot drains to that drainage ditch and into our retention pond.
did Franklin approve that?
Yeah,
Did they?
that's what we're here and finding out. Nobody can really answer me that question
Whether they
at this
did it?
point, yeah. But we've got to find out. All I'm saying is, it's, I know that lot to the north of there drains onto that property right there.
Brian, did it, Commissioner Baird, did it require drainage board approval?
Our drainage board gave it pending approval, or that the sheet would come out okay on that because we're adding on such a small piece. But right now, I can't start building.
No, but I mean, did the drainage board give the doggy daycare approval?
No,
It just, they said the meeting, drainage board meeting, it just appeared.
It-
Nothing ever was brought to it, and it's just,
and I've contacted the city of Franklin 5-6 months ago, trying to inquire on how that happened. And nobody can tell me, but they tell me that that drain's okay to be there.
Huh.
So I'm just saying there's
Yeah.
a battle going on, and I hate to get drawn into that battle. I don't think we will, because I think anything we could do on that property is going to handle itself, but I just wanted that to be known that there is an issue there.
Well, and the reality of it is, since you have influence over what happens top and influence over what happens at the bottom, I can't imagine you're gonna allow the top to go into the bottom.
We hope not.
Yeah. And you. guys
Depends on what
control
the city of Franklin does.
There
You
go.
cities. You're always messing.
Well,
with
we're a
us.
town, and you know. you see
That's
the
right.
drainage, we're a town.
That's no big deal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, do we have any further discussion on the purchase agreement?
I put Ron to sleep over here.
Oh, yeah.
I have no further discussion. Do I have a motion to approve?
I would note just the agreement before you has an exhibit A and exhibit B. Exhibit A is not attached because we didn't have the legal description yet. And obviously to go to the title work, it'd have to have the legal description. But I had them print out the plat for you to see where it is. But the exhibit B are seller's representations that I always require. So they're pretty standard. I put it in every one. But otherwise, that with the correction of town to city, I think is ready for your action if you're so inclined.
Pretty standard contract.
Yeah.
Agreement.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Does that take care of your old business?
It does, sir, as well as the executive session. The next executive sessions will be along the lines of plans, of buildings and things of those nature.
Very good. Next board meeting is November 14th, 2022 at 1:30 PM. I will not be here.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'll be in Missouri.
We never get to say goodbye to you at the end of the year.
Well,
And
don't
then
say
welcome again.
goodbye.
Well, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. You know what I'm saying. We have to separate. We don't
I
get to
love you.
celebrate you at the end of the year.
So I'll be at the National League of Cities Conference and I'm speaking, so I can't back out on that one.
Ooh, can I go with you?
Sure.
Where is it?
Speaking of public safety and crime,
Oh, I'd love to.
Where is it?
Kansas City.
In
Yeah.
December?
It's kind of like Iowa. Somebody goes to
December?
Iowa for a conference. They're like, why would you go to
November.
Iowa for a conference? Yeah, it's kind of like, why would you go to Missouri? for a conference?
Any public comment?
Here.
Okay. Do a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So we're adjourned.
You.
Carla,